I'm Rantasmo, and badasses need more gay. Homophobia sucks. It sucks real bad. But right next door to homophobia is a similar problem that exists even within the gay community. It's often called effeminophobia, or negative attitudes towards men who are effeminate. Femme guys are sometimes seen as weak, cowardly, or maybe even putting on an act to fit into some sort of effeminate hive mind led by a big gay Borg queen. This attitude exists in cinema too. Some of the earliest images of homosexuality we saw in movies came in the form of the sissy, a flamboyant feminine character whom many would call an offensive stereotype. The problem is that some stereotypes have a grain of truth. In fighting against the stereotype of flamboyant femme gay men, we tend to minimize the flamboyant femme men who actually exist in real life, and deserve as much positive representation as anyone else. So in creating an effeminate character, how do we decide what's acceptable, what's believable, and what's a stereotype? I'd like to address this problem by shining a spotlight on a different sort of femme character. Join me as I count down my top 8 effeminate badasses. We see a lot of butch male badasses, and girly female badasses, and even some butch female badasses. But it's not often that we see a girly male character whose ass is very bad. These 8 characters prove that there's a very fine line between being fierce and being fierce. Number 8. Paul Smecker from Boondock Saints. Is this movie good? I honestly don't know anymore. It's such a parody of itself that it's sort of beyond any value one could assign to it. One thing it does show is that not all badasses have to be brawny. Some use their brains instead, like gay forensic mastermind Paul Smecker. Smecker's not exactly the nicest guy, but he's about the closest we get to a moral center in this story of vigilante justice. Also, this happens? I just don't know. Smecker's a fun, capable character, and he definitely belongs on this list, but I think I'm just gonna give him the lowest slot and be done with it. Number 7. Ra from Stargate. Some would argue that this character is actually an example of demonizing queerness and androgyny, by having this sinister, inhuman monster be played by Jay Davidson, the same gender-bending actor who starred in The Crying Game. This may be a fair point, but director Roland Emmerich is known to be a fan of the peen himself. And Ra always struck me as one of the more interesting characters in this movie, maybe because we know so little about him. What made this malevolent cosmic entity decide to take the form of an Egyptian twink with an army of beefy, bare-midriffed bodyguards? Is there a reason his eyes and voice do that, or is it just to be scary? I say a badass villain is still badass, and Ra manages to make bad look so pretty. Numbers 6 and 5. Light and L from Death Note. 2 more characters who prefer to flex their minds rather than their muscles. One's a righteous killer with a magical notebook. One's an eccentric but brilliant detective with incredibly poor posture. But both definitely come across as a bit fey. This is pretty typical in a lot of anime, at least in terms of art style that makes all the guys look about as manly as Gem in the Holograms. But these dudes just aren't as interested in any of the female characters as they are in each other, and making their hair look excellent. Number 4. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. Cloud's actually pretty masculine by JRPG standards. Japan does love them some protagonists with spiky frosted tips, don't they? And even more so, they seem to love male characters who are a lot less interested in their female love interests than they are in the other male characters. How much time does Cloud spend thinking about Eris and Tifa compared to Sephiroth and Zack? And depending on whether you play your cards right, Barret. Final Fantasy protagonists got even girlier after Cloud, but he strikes a nice balance between delicacy and brutality. He may talk softly, but Cloud carries one very big sword, and he knows how to use it. Number 3. Lafayette from True Blood. Okay, first of all, way to totally steal my look. Everyone knows I've been wearing do-rags and eyeshadow since way before True Blood. Lafayette's been through a lot, and he doesn't exactly stand much chance against vampires and other supernaturals. But when it comes to humans, he takes exactly zero crap from anybody, especially those who insult his burger making abilities.
You come in my house, you gonna eat my food the way I f***ing make it!
Lafayette seems like the sort of guy I'd actually enjoy hanging out with, except maybe minus the whole dangerous drug dealing thing. Number 2. Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. How many other lead characters in an action movie have you seen wearing this much eyeliner? Apparently, Disney wasn't happy with Johnny Depp's performance at first. They weren't sure whether he was supposed to be gay, drunk, or utterly insane. I like to think that he's a little of each. And Jack ended up being a really popular character, precisely because of his flamboyance. I haven't seen movie number 4 yet, and I've heard sort of mixed reactions, but Captain Jack pretty much made the Pirates movies, and he's definitely earned his place in the halls of effeminate badassery. And my all-time number 1 effeminate badass is Shirley from the Venture Brothers. I love this show! It's amazing how the Venture Brothers managed to take a few silly parodies of 1960s animation and expand them into an incredibly detailed and fleshed out mythology. Shore Leave started out as a cheap gag about a team of G.I. Joe-style superheroes themed after the Village People, but he developed into a really prominent and appealing character who's actually competent at what he does. And what he does is pure awesome.
That's right! This is all happening! Cannot change the channel now!
He really does exemplify the ultimate femme badass. And as silly as this show is, I think he's the sort of role model that nerdy femme guys can actually look up to. I leave you with an honorable mention who didn't make the cut on account of his not being fictional. I give you Ninja Chris Colfer.